things are going to take twice as long and, twice as expensive as you thought it would be. But you've also got to figure out who the right people are in the market.
Welcome to Business Buying for Financial Independence. I'm Tim Delaney, and I help young professionals buy small businesses so they can escape the 9-to-5 and take control of their time, income, and future. If that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button and let's get into it.
Today's guest is Michael Linden, an entrepreneur that shifted gears from a printing industry to buying a sunscreen company. I'm excited to dig into his story and share it with all of you. Michael, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
No problem. Thanks for being here. I'd like to start with just giving the audience a little bit of background about you, where you came from, what your background is, and how you ended up here.
Sure. So my name is Michael Linden. And I live and grew up in North Carolina. Went to school in UNC Chapel Hill. So I'm a Tar Heel. So if any Dukies or Woolpackers are listening, it's time to turn it off. But
thanks for turning off my audience already.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. Everybody stick around. We don't have a whole lot of room to talk right now with basketball. So no. So I grew up in North Carolina. Went to school in North Carolina. Graduated from UNC in 2008 and went to work for a family printing company. So I ran the operations side of the business. So we did specialty printing such as book printing for the North Carolina court system, election printing, and signage and direct mail and so other types of both in the political side of things, but also just the direct to consumer side of things that was not associated with anything political. But worked for that business for 15 years. We grew it nicely, had several acquisitions within the process. And I kind of got the taste of buying businesses and really just, we grew organically and through acquisition. So fast forward 15 years in, was looking for a new adventure, and my wife and I just kind of started the process of looking into building businesses, buying businesses, and ended up in the sunscreen world. So that's kind of the short end of it, but it's obviously a lot of details in between.
Nice. Maybe we'll circle back to some of those acquisitions during your time in the printing company. But for now, what my audience is most interested in is people that have bought their own small businesses. So let's start. So you mentioned you left the printing or you were thinking about starting or buying a business. Do you want to talk a little bit about that deliberation process and how you ended up buying instead of starting?
Sure. So in the sun care world, there's a lot of activity that seems to happen. And I kind of got the bug in researching different opportunities for me outside the printing world. So following the sun care world, there were some acquisitions that were happening that piqued my interest. And I said, okay, well, maybe I'll start a business, right? And we'll get started and just kind of either be a side hustle or we'll make a leap at some point. But what we found out is even if you've got a blank check, it just takes time. So sunscreen is an FDA regulated drug. So you've got formulations, you've got approvals, you've got stability testing. There's just a lot of things in the process, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, it just takes time. So kind of leaning on my history of, okay, we've bought businesses before, I looked at it and said, okay, is there a small sunscreen company for sale, or are there formulas for sale, or is somebody exiting the sun care world that might give us a little bit of a head start? And so after going down that path, we realized that there was. So we found a gentleman that, I call him the old beach bum. His name's Steve Finley, and he and his wife had run a sun care business for 40 years, and he was looking to exit the business and had formulas, had product, had a life of, a life of sun care that he could share with me and kind of consult with. And so that's kind of how we ended up going down that path. But it was obviously pretty complicated and expensive to do it that way. But it kind of gave us the head start that we wanted to, and the kind of the branding that we needed to kind of start making a dent in the market space.
Okay. So backing up a step, it seemed like you were kind of set on the sun care industry. Was there a particular reason for that, or how did that come about?
Well, I mean, yes, there's the political answers, and then there's the real answers. And the real answer is I think it's a cool industry.
Yeah.
My mom had melanoma, so she battled skin cancer and won. It's a completely not completely, but it's pretty preventable cancer type, and given the good prognosis, it's beatable too. Mm-hmm. So I looked at it in the sun care world, whether you're looking at cosmetics or traditional sunscreens, it's a growing industry. I mean, it's growing worldwide. So it's not just a niche in the Southeast. It's not just a niche in Australia. I mean, it is a growing business, and it was actually interesting to find something that I enjoyed, or I found interesting, because I loved the printing world, but it is a retracting industry. Unless you're in a very specialty niche market, it's there's a lot of printers going out of business every day. So we know how to reinvent, and we did a good job with that on the print world. So I just looked at it and said, okay, it's nice to be part of a industry that's growing instead of retracting.
That's definitely a bonus upside of getting into sun care over printing. That's so a good thing to look for in an industry in general is something that is growing across the board. So good choice.
I will put an asterisk by that.
Yeah.
And say, like many things, I had no idea how complicated it was, though. So while it is a growing industry, you're operating in a complex industry with big players, big money, well-established brands, and it's just everything from manufacturing to distribution is just complicated.
I bet that's 'cause you definitely see the big names out there all the time. Probably Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson, I'm sure, are both in the game with massive advertising budgets and
absolutely
scientists. So I would give yourself a little bit more credit, though. I mean, you must have realized it was a complicated industry, because you already said that you decided to buy rather than create because of some of those hurdles to get into it.
Sure.
Which is good. And that's also another thing we talk about sometimes in the business world, getting into an industry that has barriers to entry, that not just everybody can pop up a new sunscreen brand overnight with all the regulations and hurdles. I mean, maybe Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson can, but for the most part, it's not like a restaurant or a pizzeria or a hair salon where there's a new one on every corner every day, and nobody really, there's nothing preventing anybody from doing it.
Sure.
So when you decided to buy, what did that process look like? Did you go on a long search? Did you engage with brokers? How did you come about finding Mr. Finley?
It's funny. You just Google. So I mean, you go out and Google any business for sale, right? So I Googled sunscreen company for sale, just because that's kind of how we've done it in the past. And there are those big business broker websites, and I feel like some of it is a little, disingenuous sometimes. You never know if the businesses are real. You don't know if they're just kind of a little bait to get you in. It's so what I did is I found his company name on just an older listing. I think at that point it was probably a year or two old. And I just reached out to him direct and said, hey, I don't know if your company's actually for sale, but if it is, I'd love to have a conversation. But if it's sold, or you're not interested, or you've gone a different direction, then no hard feelings, but just, if you don't mind, let me know one way or another. And turns out he had taken the company off the market with that particular broker, and I guess the broker had asked if he could use it as a listing for a little bit longer, as just kind of a lead magnet. So I mean, that kind of reinforced what my thoughts were. But at the end of the day, relationships, I mean, we're doing a relationship transaction just as much as a business transaction. So I cold called him. He called me back. We had, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 hour-long conversations, just to get to a point where we felt like, okay, it made sense, and and kind of got to know each other on a personal level.
Nice. I want to touch on a couple things you mentioned there. One is those broker listings. I've come across this in the past as well. And as you mentioned, the brokers will oftentimes just leave up listings, whether the business owner has pulled the listing from them or whether the business is already sold or whatever various reason. They're not in a rush to take them down because people will call on it. And then the broker at least has their foot in the door with a prospective buyer and can show them something else or go out and find something else for them.
Sure.
So it's a tactic that I'm not a huge fan of from brokers, but I understand where they're coming from and why they do it. And it can lead to good results for all the parties sometimes, as long as you're just aware of what you're getting into when you call one of those listings. Yeah, it sounds like you've had experiences like that in the past.
No, not really. I just at the end of the day, it's a sales pitch, right? I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm in sales every day, so it's just if there are a lot of folks that cash out a 401k or they go down the rabbit hole of YouTube or TikTok and wake up and say, I'm going to buy a business. And if you don't know where to start, it can be pretty complicated and can get expensive, or you don't always get the full picture. And obviously there's lawyers and CPAs and there's a lot of people that you should engage with, but not everybody gets to that point quick enough and either burn some money or just kind of gets burned, period.
Yeah, great. Great piece of advice there of just making sure you're vetting everybody and everything very carefully, not spending money on things unnecessarily.
Sure.
So those conversations, and then at least 5 hour-long conversations. You mentioned it's a relationship transaction, it is business, but it's also about relationship. When you're talking about buying a small business, it's usually the seller is somebody that has started this themselves, or it's like their child. And so they want to see it as much as they would love a big check in their hands. They also want to see that business thrive and survive and grow under new leadership. So you talked about being a salesman. Like, I'm sure at some point you were kind of selling yourself to Mr. Finley. Would that be accurate?
I mean, the big thing was that our story kind of sold itself. I mean, in this industry, you see a lot of people, and not just our industry, it's many industries where, a company gets to a certain point and it needs to take on outside funding, and, then ultimately that business gets sold, right? Somebody needs to realize an equity position at some point, whether it's a bank, whether it's buddies, a group of folks, a venture fund, whatever it is, that's not uncommon. And so what we realized was we wanted to run it as bootstrapped as we could. And so when I was talking to Steve, I mean, he realized that's what we wanted to do. And that's what he and his wife had done. And that is he'll tell you that is what prevented him from being a bigger brand or really having a lasting business that was much bigger than he was. He was good on the sales side and good on the marketing side of creating names and look and feel. But whenever he needed a cash infusion, he would sell one of his brands. So Rubber Ducky had been around. I mean, that's our brand, and he'd created a couple other brands, and he would just sell it off and sell some formulas, and things progress a lot. So that was just how he worked. He didn't operate with a bunch of debt. He didn't operate with huge capital overhead. But as he was looking to exit the business, it got even leaner. So that is where he and I kind of bonded, and he realized, okay, to the extent that Michael and his wife can do it, they're going to run it as an independent family business. And, that was important to him, and it was important to us because, there's just, you never know where something's going to go. But if you bring in a bunch of partners and a bunch of money, things just get a little too high pressure for obvious reasons and really good reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just you and your wife. You don't have to answer to other investors or partners, maybe a bank, but that's a different story. It's not a daily decision-making pressure type situation.
Sure.
It's during the acquisition or prior to the acquisition or after the acquisition, when did you kind of start thinking about what your plans were for the company in terms of growth? Was it status quo as it is? Was it going to be good enough without ever raising sales or anything else? Or what was your kind of plan going into it?
No, I mean, we kind of looked at it as a distressed asset. So, I mean, the business was founded in 1983, and, you know, we kind of say it's reimagined in 2023. So really at the 40-year mark, you know, we looked at it, and Steve and his wife had not had a huge independent retail presence. They had some Amazon presence. They were really selling to people in a not a super structured manner. He didn't have a huge sales team at any point. So we looked at it and said, okay, the low hanging fruit is it had to be rebranded, right? New logo, new packaging. He didn't have an e-commerce website that was cohesive with the brand. So it was pretty much the first 6 to 8 months was, okay, what do we need to do, right? And we hired an agency who are buddies of mine, and they started kind of the deep brand dive, and then from there we started plans of, okay, how do we get back into traditional independent retailers? And that is, you know, that's a whole chore in itself. So we had the roadmap, and that's not a short roadmap. That's a very long roadmap, but that is, we chose to focus more on independent retail in our Amazon sales, just to kind of pay the bills while we develop our direct-to-consumer plan. Because everybody wants to, with direct-to-consumer, everybody, A, it's expensive, but B, everybody wants to take a big fat retainer, and they want you to have huge ad spend. And when you pin them against the wall and ask what my return on investment is going to be, they say, well, we just don't know until we start. So whereas I know if I spend $1,500 to go to a trade show, I'm in full control over that, right? I might get skunked, but at the end of the day, I'm talking to real people, and they're buying a little higher priced invoice worth of stuff, and helping me not only spread the word, but, supporting their shop with new products, which is, to me, important. I mean, I'm pro small business and independent retailers, and I think right now, especially now with everything being so politicized, luckily all our products are made in America, and that's something that really resonates with our retailers.
Yeah, that's awesome. The small retailers, small businesses are a backbone of the United States and the economy. So giving them a product that differentiates them as well as supports you is a great model. But I guess at the bottom line, what I was kind of getting at with that question is you went into the transaction or immediately after the transaction with a plan for growth. It wasn't a buy this and ride it out for the next 20 years. It was, we're going to build this up, which is what I kind of encourage people to do if they're looking at buying a business, especially I hadn't even realized that it was a 40-year-old business when you bought it, which is crazy. Good, gives you some legacy to stand on, and then a lot of room for growth as well, which is awesome.
Yeah.
How have you found the transition? The printing industry was a franchise, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm. Well, so right? It was a family-owned business there at one point in about 2011. The ownership joined the Alpha Graphics franchise network, which was amazing, right? I mean, that was a great experience, and it was, kind of provided a good blueprint of, the next horizon in the print world.
Were there lessons you learned from being a part of a franchise, or how do you compare and contrast the franchise world to independently running?
The franchise world is a great world if you're looking for frameworks, if you're kind of starting out, if you're looking for kind of some buying power. Like we benefited from, buying equipment and just negotiated prices with like UPS. There's just a lot of hidden benefits that worked for us. The thing that you often forget in the franchise world is it's still a business and you still have to make it go, right? It's just because you have a name and you have a shingle and you have an LLC doesn't mean you're going to make money. So it's a matter of getting out in the community, you leveraging all the resources that the franchise provides. But at some point, you got to run your business. The franchisor is not going to, and they're not interested in it, right? They're interested in providing a framework and helping you build your business. And so I think people sometimes forget about that. And I think knowing that helped me parlay into our own business, because there's nobody that's going to just magically show up and save you, right? You have to put in the hours, you have to do the work, you have to figure it out. And that's also what I enjoy. So it was, it was a good situation for us.
Awesome. I'm guessing that with the franchising, there's a lot of branding involved, and maybe previously with your printing business as well. And that's something you've definitely focused on with Rubber Ducky, correct?
Mm-hmm.
With repackaging, building that brand.
Absolutely.
Why do you feel why do you feel it's so important to build that brand?
Well, I just think it resonates with people. And when I'm talking about branding, yes, we updated our logo, and that's important, right? But your logo is not going to just magically make you money. That's just like it was funny when in the print world, people would say, I just need, if you can get my business cards right, buddy, I'll bring everything to you. And we were the first ones to be like, you know what, you need to go find somebody else, because it's such an important part of their world, but it's not an important part of making money. And so when I focused on the marketing side with Rubber Ducky, I was kind of leaning on the experience we saw on the print world, where you just see some really cool brands come in. And it's not just, fancy packaging and fancy print. Like, you just see the depth of photography, you see the culture they've built out, the employees that work with them, and just the whole brand side of it is where it's at, right? Anybody can make a widget. And so that is something that we looked at Rubber Ducky and said, okay, we can do something with that. And it resonates with all ages. It has a mascot. It has kind of all the standard formula of success. And, if executed correctly, you've got a good brand, but you still have to make it go. But it was a really strong foundation to work with, and you could really develop it in multiple directions, which is important.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. There's so many people that just think of a brand as just a logo, but it goes way beyond that in business. So right up to your employees and your office culture, and being a company that other people want to do business with is all still part of your overall brand, and it's an important part.
Sure. I look at our brand as kind of my motto, and it's kind of cliche and cheesy, but my two rules in business are I don't want to work with jerks and I want to have fun. And I'm in the sunscreen business, so I don't really take myself too serious. I take the business seriously, but I don't take myself too seriously, because it's a fun industry and it's a serious industry, but our brand is Rubber Ducky Sunscreen. Like, what, you can't take it too seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. It's doing such a serious and important job for people. But I like think about the times that I use sunscreen. It's 95% of those are, you're about to do something fun, whether it's playing sports or going to the pool, the beach, whatever. It's a fun, you're in the entertainment industry in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, so you're wholesale to independent retailers versus immediately jumping into direct to consumer, which you mentioned is daunting and expensive. Let's talk a little bit about social media and your online presence as part of your branding. How does that play in? What have you learned? What's working and not working in that department?
Yeah, social media is everything. I know it's so cliche, but just in the past year, I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole of, content creation, and I'm so late to the game. But the point is, nobody's really late, right? So part of our strategy when we bought the business was hire a dynamic agency. So we hired a company called Chair 8. They're buddies of mine and become good friends. And not only do they do branding, but they also do photography, they do social media management, they do video, and they're more on the boutique level, right? I mean, you've got a smaller team, but everybody's kind of involved with it. And so as we were building out the branding, we were also building out, okay, how is it going to translate into digital? Because I don't really, we've got some brochures and some, informal videos that the retailers see on the wholesale side, but it's how do we get in front of the customer and really show A, our personality, B, what we stand for, and really differentiate ourselves in the market. And so I'm sure everybody does that, but that was a huge component of where we spent money and invested our time and still invest our time. And so looking at our social media, all the opportunities up to this point have really solidified all the opportunities have really come to fruition because of our social, I would say. Not just because when I go and we're a newbie, right? Newbie in the industry, and I need an outside sales team. When I was approaching them, the first thing they would do is go check out our Facebook and check out our Instagram. And, they would see, okay, even though if you don't have a huge following, your branding's there. And your branding on your social matches your branding on your website. And if you give them a business card, the branding matches that too. So that was a huge component as a part of our strategy, and still is, because we can reach new audiences. You can put some ad spend behind it, but even if you've got the money to spend on ads, consumers are not dumb. The first thing they do is go check you out on social. And if you've got 4 posts and they all look inconsistent, they see through it. And we don't, our consumers, our product is not a cheap product. It's a premium product, and our buyers are smart and they're sophisticated and they spend their money wisely. And so we needed to treat them with that respect, and still do, because they're also my friends, right? Anybody who needs to get in touch with me can get in touch with me. So all of that was a complete representation as part of our social strategy, if that makes any sense. We've gotten brand partnerships with it. We just launched today a partnership with Choose, which is an online app. It's they do kind of, I call it flash deals, for lack of a better word, where it's like a 3-week promotion. You get a little bit of discounted rate, but they pick high quality, well thought out brands, and brands that I probably have no business being on the same website with, but they trust it because we've invested where it matters. And we've got a few more of those partnerships coming out. We've gotten, a lot of credibility from our social, and that means something.
That's awesome, because I think the big thing with a lot of companies that generally do wholesale type sales is you don't get access to that end consumer very much, but with an active social media presence, you can still learn a lot about your audience and your customer base.
Yeah. Well, it's also important, you just hit the nail on the head that I didn't articulate, is when somebody's standing in a hardware store or a women's boutique or a kid's store or a beach store, they're going to pull you up and say, okay, who are they? Right. And so it's also an indirect extension of supporting those retailers, which makes sense for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a retail wine and liquor store. And one of the things that I have done in the past is when a wholesaler brings in new products for us to try and are giving us a pitch, the actual producer or supplier doesn't even know that they're there that day with their product. I'll take a picture of the products and tag that manufacturer on social in a story. And the ones that have already responded before that distributor even leaves our store are the brands that we end up bringing in the store, because we know that they're going to be pushing our store, our location, as somewhere that consumers can find their product. And it's, not everybody has the teams to do that or the time or the capacity, but it works for the ones that do.
Absolutely.
circling back to the actual transaction again. So you spent a lot of time talking to Steve and working out the details. What were the next steps? Like, how did you logistically sign a contract, an LOI? How did that go about? And what was the transaction process like from there?
Steve's old school, and I probably am a little bit to a fault. I mean, we kind of had a handshake deal of kind of, here's what we think will happen. But at that point, knowing that it was more of a distressed asset, his value were his intellectual property. So he had trademarked Rubber Ducky Sunscreen, and a few other brands, and the marquee is Rubber Ducky, and that's our plan to really build that out, and wanted to build it out in a manner that would make sense for the long term. And so, without knowing how ironclad his trademarks were, we really were kind of at a standstill. So we took a leap of faith and hired an IP attorney. And that was really the next step, is really to go in, vet it, figure out where the holes were, make sure all the filings were current, all the things that Steve said had occurred. We wanted to make sure that that's what would occur when the transaction closed. So that was really the next step. So, I mean, we spent a bunch of money on attorneys. We waited and just kind of started the process of, okay, assuming everything's going to check out, what does a purchase agreement look like? What does the timeline look like? And luckily, Steve, going back to it being a family business, we weren't really beholden to a bunch of investors or banks or this and that. And so it was pretty informal. And I mean, it was very structured and very legally dotted, but it was a more casual process that I liked. I mean, that's how previous acquisitions had gone when we were with the printing company, and just doing business with people that want to do business makes it a whole lot easier to execute that business.
Yeah. Did you have any kind of intermediary or, aside from your attorneys, was there anybody else kind of going between you and Steve to work out the details, or was it just the two of you?
No, it's just the two of us. And, obviously we have I keep saying me or we, my wife and I, made every decision together. I mean, it's, and his wife made decisions with them. I mean, it worked. And we didn't have anybody in between. So there was not a game of telephone or waiting for callbacks, which, can be good and bad. But we really didn't have a whole lot of egos involved, other than, his attorney and my attorney making sure, okay, things are documented and people are doing what they say they're going to do. But, that's just part of an acquisition like this is very transactional. But the other part is kind of a leap of faith and making sure that the other party will, hold up their part of the agreement. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you mentioned there is you spent a good amount on attorneys prior to really even having a solid contract in place, it sounds like, with some of the IP, doing your due diligence on that. You hear a lot of people talk about buying businesses with no and low money down, and I'm guilty of saying that here and there as well. Sure. But there are business types and there are times where you're going to have to come out of pocket quite a bit just to get to the starting line of a certain business. So important to keep that in mind, especially when you're talking about IP, intellectual property, and FDA approved formulations and all those good things. So,
well, and at that point, I was still working full time during all this process, and I had I didn't doubt what was happening with Steve. I knew it was all on the up and up, but we could have gone through this process and him say, you know what, I like you, but I'm not ready to sell yet. Give me 2 more years. Right. I mean, I was not quitting my job. I was not going to make emotional decisions based, until we figured out, okay, are trademarks valid? Are things good? Are formulas there? And a lot of that is just time. If you get in a hurry, it can get pretty sloppy. But that was one part of it where it's like, hey, whether it happens or not, it could save you a lot of money, or it could save you a lot of headache, or save you some heartbreak too.
Yeah. Another great valuable tidbit there of don't rush to quit your job just because you find the business. Make sure it's actually going to get to the finish line before you're put yourself in a position where you don't have any cash coming in and you're still not sure if the business is going to close. So
Sure.
Take your time, make sure everything's good before you rush to quit, unless you know that you have the runway to survive for a while. Any other like big surprises or things like during the transaction that people should be aware of that may come up in a transaction of their own?
No, I don't think there were any surprises. Every business deal, I'm sure, is unique. Ours, I think the biggest thing that that I would say my wife and I we're maybe a little bit surprised with is how big the legal fees can get quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, it just is what it is. I mean, and you get to the end of the line, and I think that's every deal. I mean, my brother's in commercial real estate, and I know people like yourself all over the place, and it's just all it takes is one little complication, and things go north quickly. But I think that was the biggest deal. Everything else I feel like we had a pretty good handle on, and really the surprises kind of come after you buy the business and you start trying to execute your plan, and people are on different timelines, or things don't happen the way you think it's going to happen.
Yep, definitely. And I think the lawyers, one of the ways that I've found to keep the legal bills down is, like you and Steve did, is try to have as many of those conversations directly, either with the seller, or if you're using a broker, using the broker's time rather than letting the attorneys talk back and forth, because they'll talk for hours. They're getting paid for every minute they use. So just trying to hash out as many details as possible, either direct with the seller or with that broker. And like you said, brokers, there's times and places where a third party intermediary person in the middle can add a lot of value, and there's times where they can just slow things down with games of telephone and delays on getting back to each other.
Sure.
So what's next for Rubber Ducky? It's been about 2 years now. What's your kind of long-term plans?
End of this month will be 2 years. I feel like we're in a good spot. We're getting some good looks. We're developing. I feel like we've got our core product line in place. We've got some ideas for some expansion, but there's no immediate rush to do it. The economy's kind of just, we're like everybody else, kind of watching that. But really it's time to work, right? It's time to do more sales. It's time to engage more sales reps. I had another sales rep group approach me today and scheduling a call. So a lot of it's just figuring out what the day holds. I mean, we've got our blueprint for the remainder of the year, next year, but all of that stuff depends on growing doors, but also, making sure that we're growing the market from a brand standpoint.
Is Sunscreen a fairly seasonal business, or do you guys have need for it all year round down there? I know we use it about a week a year up here in Buffalo.
Sure. So yes. So if you're talking in Florida and Texas and California, yes, it is year round, especially in the folks in the Midwest, Arizona and Nevada and all that area. We haven't even scratched the surface in that part of the country. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely see a seasonal spike, and part of that with us is we've been catering more to a retail network, right? And they've got buying patterns, and once they kind of, a retailer gets to a certain point, they may hold their inventory and purchase, issue a PO in January again. But when you look at Florida and those retailers, it's a different game, and we're working that angle as well. But we're in growth mode, so it just takes time, and you got to get the looks and put the reps in.
Nice. With Salesforce, you mentioned a group that reached out to you, are you hiring internal salespeople or do you hire like manufacturers reps, or how does that work?
Yeah, so at this point, knock on wood, we've been very fortunate to have a really great network of independent sales reps. So in kind of the beach and specialty world, you've got reps that might carry multiple lines. So they might carry our line and 3 others, and the old adage is you kind of have one line that pays the hotel, one line that pays the travel expenses, one that pays for food. I mean, it's nice to have somebody that has 3 to 5 lines and willing to develop a new brand, really. So you've got road warriors, we've got folks that have kind of strategically placed all over the Southeast and Midwest, and they kind of eat what they kill. They go out and bang on the doors. They bring an order. We pay them a commission, and we do all the kind of logistics heavy lifting. But we've been fortunate to work with some really good ones. And emerging brands are tough because not everybody has the bandwidth or the time to develop it. And getting folks that like to get on the road on a regular basis is hard because it's expensive and it's just time consuming, and getting away from your family is hard on the family. So it's a different world, but we were very fortunate on that front.
Nice. How is manufacturing? How does that work? Are you doing it yourself? Do you have a third-party contractor? You mentioned it's all in the U.S. Is it all one facility or multiple?
So there's multiple facilities. All of our products are produced by contract manufacturers. So that is their bread and butter. That's what they get paid to do. They're really good at it. They've got a team. They've got experts. And they help deal with a lot of the logistics and stuff that I can't handle. So we're running a pretty lean operation, and that works for us. So we've got really good partners. They will produce, they will package, they will ship, they will do whatever we need them to do, and they're used to dealing with everything from small guys to big guys. So they've forgotten a lot more than I'll know.
Those are good partners to have.
Sure.
If somebody was considering getting into a consumer product like a sunscreen or something, there's dozens and dozens of other products out there. What kind of advice would you give them, or what things should they be looking at, or red flags to watch for?
That's a good question. So I think the easy cliche ones are, make sure you got some runway, right? Things are going to take twice as long and, twice as expensive as you thought it would be. But you've also got to figure out who the right the right people are in the market. And it's some days business can feel like the Wild West, but if you're really kind and you're willing to stop talking long enough and listen to what the veterans in the industry have to say, it makes your life a lot easier, right? I mean, they're people that have done it longer. They know more than you do, and there's some really good advice out there. And if you just hang out with the right folks and treat people well, it will take you a lot further than your independent knowledge that you think you might have.
Great advice. Do you have any insights or suggestions on how to get around those right people?
I think what you kind of put out there is what you attract, right? If you're an egomaniac and a narcissist and you don't want to listen to what other people say, you're not going to naturally do that. I've got a really good spouse. We've got, for better or for worse, you're going to know where we stand. And I think people who enjoy that collaboration, tend to find the people that kind of hang out in their corner. And I would say that saying yes or maybe is a lot more important than saying no. I guard my time, like on LinkedIn, people reach out, everybody wants to set a meeting with you. And so, my natural reaction is to say no. But if for instance, you and I met on social media, if I'd said no or didn't even think twice about it, we wouldn't be here. So being able to position yourself with a maybe or even a yes more times than no, I think that puts you with the right people too, because you kind of get a feel of which way the wind's going to blow.
Yep. Yeah. And it's challenging to decipher. I'm in the same boat. A lot of times you get messages from people. It's tough to know what their motives are, whether they're legit, whether, all those types of things go through your mind, and time is important. It's it's a very finite resource that we all have. So,
but 99% of the time, everybody has genuine, they want to help, right? They're kind. If you look for the good in folks, it's there. The problem, the time wasters with me are the people that just incessantly want to sell without talking, right? They just want to sell you. They want to talk at you. And those are actually the easy ones to weed out. But if you say yes or maybe and kind of hop on calls and you burn some time, but there's some really cool people out there, and it's wild how people make a living, which is fun.
100%. I've had, for me, it's been Threads lately that I've just been super active on, and had a bunch of great calls and talks like this with other entrepreneurs through that platform, which is surprising to me. LinkedIn never clicked with me. I'm going to make an effort at it again, but it's, even though LinkedIn should be more authentic because we're all out there with our real names and faces, but Threads has been, for me, a hot platform. And you're right, taking these calls, I haven't had one yet out of the dozens I've taken that I kick myself for wasting the time on yet. So it's been good.
That's awesome. Not everybody can say that, but also you're putting yourself out there, right? So part of the social media side of things is cringy as it can be, just putting yourself out there and doing what you would normally do. Just you can't expect to get a bunch of followers overnight, but there are people. That's kind of the point of what I was trying to make earlier, is if you kind of put it out there, the people that you will, naturally hang out with will find you. And it's crazy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Any final pieces of advice for somebody looking to buy a business, or any other information about Rubber Ducky that you'd like to share with the audience?
Sure. My shameless plug is, if you're looking for some sunscreen, check us out, rubberducky.com. Or check us out on Instagram or Facebook at Rubber Ducky Brand. But outside of that, the biggest advice I can have is take your time, right? But not to the point of analysis paralysis, right? At some point, you're either going to do it or you're not. And make sure you have a good partner, whether it's a spouse or a legitimate business partner, or attorneys or CPAs. But don't try to figure it out on your own. And if it doesn't feel like it's going to work, that's probably a pretty big gut check that you need to listen to.
Yeah, your gut plays a pretty strong role in this, as well as the numbers, the spreadsheets, the legal stuff is all important, but you got to trust your gut as well. I think, to your point, analysis paralysis, just analyzing deals over and over again, looking at the number, even the basic numbers that you can get off of the business broker sites without bothering the brokers or going into too much detail, can be very helpful in learning what's going to be a good deal and what's going to be a bad deal. So,
sure.
Great point on taking time, but not overdoing it on the time. You still need to eventually take that action and jump in with both feet, and it'll work out if it was meant to be.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Awesome. I will be putting all those links that Michael mentioned in the show notes below. If you're into sunscreen, or even if you're not, you probably should be, because it's important. Check out Rubber Ducky and give Michael a follow on the social media. He puts out some great stuff. And thanks for being here, Michael. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. It's awesome.
Thank you to everybody for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, really would appreciate if you took a minute to hit that subscribe or follow button on your podcast app right now. That helps us gain popularity and get the word out to more people. So thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Business Buying for Financial Independence. If you're serious about owning your time and building long-term wealth, Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.